welcome everyone to the first free online workshop of Ableton Live. I'm ElPeche, and hopefully we can get through some basic music composition on live today. If there's any problems with the audio or with the video, please let me know, as I'm not going to be looking at it all the time. I have to explain, obviously, the important part. I'm guessing you can all see my screen here. So basically what I've set out to do today within the hour is to show you a little bit about my composition processes in the most basic and synthetic way possible, just to give you an overview of how I would go about starting off a new track on Ableton. For those of you who don't use Ableton or are new to Ableton, don't worry, you can ask questions, and as I said, there is going to be a Q&A Zoom call at the end, which I'll share with you guys here once we're done. And yeah, I'll try and go not too quickly, so you can get the gist of it as well. So we've opened up a project here that I've basically just mapped out. There's nothing quite on it yet. So I've kind of done a little bit of organizing so that we have a kicks channel, a drums channel, well, that's in Portuguese, percussion, and then one dedicated to percussion loops. Then I've got a bass group with my bass, and my sub bass here. Okay, I will try to change to a microphone. Thank you, Christelle, for letting me know. I do have a microphone here. Let's see if that works better. Hopefully it will. Just bear with me 1 second. I've had a request to change the microphones here. Hello. Yep. There we go. That should be better. Now. There you go. Can you guys hear me properly now? Is that better? Okay. Hopefully it's going well. Okay. So as I was saying, this is the basic outlining of what would be a track. We've got the kicks channel, drums, percussion, a dedicated loops channel for percussion, and then we'd have a bass group with the sub and the bass. I'll explain why I usually divide that in a bit. And then I've created 2 blank channels here, which will be basically variables of whatever sounds we have in here, but to create higher pitched sounds. This is a berimbau recording. It's a Brazilian instrument that I found, so just a way to show you how to use different instruments. And that's it. That's my voice, what you're hearing here. So starting with the kicks, obviously for those of you who don't know Ableton, this is the session view. And then if I hit tab, that would be my arrangement view. If any of you are seeing this side, just hit tab and you'll go to this side. Basically, this is where you work in clips, building the building blocks of your track, and then after you've got loads of these, record an arrangement to the other side, basically. So, but today we're only going to work on this side. So starting with the kick, I have on this channel a rack that I built, which is basically a synthesized kick with one of the native synths from Live called Operator. It's very useful, Operator, for creating drum-like sounds in a synthetic way. It's an FM synth. I'm not going to go into that today, but basically allows you with different oscillators here, A, B, and C, to create the sub part of your kick, and then the punch part and the click part, and then with different envelopes like pitch envelopes and filters, you get a nice kicky, punchy sound like this. So hopefully you guys can hear that. So that's my synthesized kick sound. Basically what I've done here is I've put Operator on, and again, you guys will be getting this project at the end, so if you want to have a closer look at it, I'll be giving everyone this kick with the rack and all the mappings and how it works. Basically what we have here is Operator, and then I've grouped it to an instrument rack and then mapped out some of the variables that I want to have to control over this kick. So I've got the decay, which would make it a longer kind of kick, like a closer to an 808, or a very short dry kick. The amount of punch, which you probably can't hear over the live stream, which is just the body of the kick, and then the frequency. So if I want to create like a tom-like sound with this, I could do that as well. Currently we're using it for a kick, so we'll leave it around 70 Hertz. And then after that I've got Corpus, which is not using, it's just adds a bit of tone. And then saturation and an EQ, so we can see that works really well as a kick. So we've got our sub part here, this is our punch bit, and that's our click. And then at the end, just a compressor. So all that is mapped to these guys, these macros here. And then I've got that mapped onto a drum rack, which then allows me to have two of those. So I've got this one doing something slightly different. So as you can probably hear, that's the higher kick and that's the lower kick. So when it comes to writing that in MIDI, I've got a pre-written MIDI sequence here for that, which is just main, then the second one, and then the main again, and that will sound like what you were hearing. So that's just a basic 4 to the floor kick with a little variation here. Say if I wanted to make that sequence longer, that's now on a 4-beat loop. So if I wanted to create that as an 8-beat loop, I just right click here, duplicate that, and then I can create a little bit more of variation. So I'll just take this guy off, and I've zeroed it, and I haven't actually deleted it. Reason being, I want to know that it was there. I could hit delete and then it's gone, but then I don't know though that was there. So everything that I do in terms of building blocks, I always do by zeroing out stuff that was already there, so that if I want to put it back, I can. So that now sounds like this. So I've got a longer variation of my kick. So now what I would do is literally rename that, so kick full. Always interesting to, along your process, always rename stuff and organize it so you get to the end and you know where everything kind of is. Otherwise it can get quite tricky. So I just duplicate that now, and I would create a variation of it probably. So just come here and say, okay, I want no kick there, and and then I want that one there and none there. So that will create like a breakbeat kind of pattern. So that could be useful for bridges or breaks or something of the sort. So I'll just name that break. So I've got 2 different kicks. That's enough for now. Let's move on to the drums. Again, if anyone has any questions, do post them. If not, we'll do it at the end at the Q&A. It'll be lovely to see everyone there. So moving on from the kick to the drums. Now, same thing here. We've got a drum rack. You could use any of the pre-arranged drum racks that you get with Live. They sound alright, but the thing is, like, everyone uses them, so I always try and build my own racks for that reason. So obviously get some samples, get some sample packs, and start building your own drum racks. They usually will sound more interesting. So right here, basically we've got 3 claps, some weirdy shakers, and a hi-hat, and some maracas. So again, we've got a full MIDI clip here that I've created before. If not, you could either sequence the drums in by drawing them in. If you own a Push, it has a really cool built-in sequencer. If not, you can always play them on a keyboard and then just nudge them so they are like exactly in time. So I've got this going on here. Just put a compressor on that channel because it's not very loud. Okay, cool. So this is what I had before. I'm just going to do one from scratch now to show you guys how I would sequence these drums. So I'm on my Push here. I'm not sure if you can see. Yeah, there it is. So that's my Push. And I've got the different sounds going on here. So the Push, it would translate basically these pads here that you see, the 8 pads on your drum machine, on your drum rack, to these 8 pads here, which then means when you play an empty clip, so I'll just create an empty clip here by double clicking an empty slot. Again, I want it to be 8 beats and not 4. So I've duplicated the size of it. I'll just play that now, and it will be empty, as you can see. And now the little green lights are running through. That's our sequencer. So when I choose a sound, so I'll go with the clap for now. It's selected. I can either play it in, and record that, or I could draw them in as if I would with the mouse, but here on the sequencer. So every 5th beat, and you can see they go straight into the MIDI clip view on your live window here. That's if you have a Push, obviously. If not, you just draw them in with a mouse. So I could do the same thing here with my mouse. So now I'm gonna do your usual like house music or whatever, 4 to the floor beat. I just find it easier to explain in that way, but it applies to any rhythm or anything you want to make, basically. So if your clap's there, your hi-hat would probably be here on the third one. And there we go. And then we could have the maraca doing the counter rhythm of your hi-hat. So there you can see it's filling up quite quickly with all those high drums. So I've just noticed this is a bit messy, this sample. So what I'm going to do is come over to my drum rack, find the sample, it's this one, and if I double click it, it will open. So for every slot on the drum rack, you have a simpler loaded, which is basically a simple version of the Ableton sampler. It's used widely for one-shot samples of drums within drum racks. So I've just noticed it's not exactly, like the transient isn't exactly at the beginning. So I'm just gonna pull this there, and that should be sharper now. I can make it shorter as well if I want. Add a little bit of fade out. Yeah, that's shorter now. That should work better for what we want. Let's see. Yeah, that's a lot better. And the same applies for this guy. I'm gonna make him a little bit different. And then there's this one, which is reversed. So I could make that shorter. See, so everyone starts falling into place. So that would be kind of our basic sequence. I've got 3 claps. We're just using one for now. So what I could do is start doubling them up. So I've now written different places for each of these claps. This is the shorter one, and then this is every 2 claps, just to create some differences. And then we've got these guys, which could be quite interesting on the offbeats, maybe. Cool. So that would be our full kind of drums version. I've just noticed we're actually missing a snare. We don't need to have a snare if we're working with claps. That's like more of a creative decision. But yeah. So now that we've got our full kind of drums, what I would do is basically first rename it as drums full. We'll let this guy rest for a bit because we're not using him. And what I want to do basically is sort out the volumes here. So as we have the mixer here, and this is one of the great reasons for using the drum rack within Ableton, it's a mixer in itself. So the same way that this whole mixer here works, so does the drum rack. When you open it, it's got an internal mixer. what that means is you can control the separate volumes of each sample or of each channel within a drum rack. So if we just play it on solo for now, let me just solo my voice. So if we play that on solo, we can probably realize that the hi-hat is way too loud. This guy. So I'm just going to turn him down. At this point, we're not actually doing the tracks mix, but I always like it to sound more or less okay and in place before we go along. Because if you leave that to the end, you're gonna like be listening to something that sounds like shit for the whole of your process, and second, it's gonna take a lot more work to get it fixed at the end to find where the problem is. So you want to make your drums, or at least I usually make my drums sound at least okay before I go on. And by that I mean volumes and, you know, what we did before, like sample editing here. Not more than that. Maybe a little bit of effects as well, but not more than that. So that's our hi-hat there. And we can even go as far as renaming these guys as well. That's one of the maracas. Already says maraca there. This guy is a bit loud. Yeah, that's a bit loud. Yeah, they're both a bit loud. Yeah, so that sounds a bit better. I think the claps aren't loud enough. So if we're already on 0 here, and that's our volume, the same as it is here. If you can't see that on your live, it's probably because this is like, it's not pulled up enough. The barrier between your mixer volume and your sends. So just pull that up a little bit and that should appear. That's where your fader actually is. It's at 0. And that's how loud your signal actually is. So if we want to turn these claps up a little bit, which we do because they're not loud enough, and we're already on 0 here, that's probably because the samples themselves are not very loud. So yeah, as you can see, they're not. So I could go up to the sampler and turn it up there. It's important you do that properly and don't put that all the way up on your mixer, because otherwise it's just going to mess up your mix at the end as well. Yeah, that sounds alright. Cool. We got a problem still because we're hitting above 0 here. Not anymore. That's good. Cool. So never go above or 0 or anything yellow here, because that will give you distortion, basically. So now we've got a full kind of drums MIDI written down. We've talked a little bit about the volumes within the drum rack. What we can also do within a drum rack that sounds really cool is a little bit of panning. Again, that's already a little bit of mix process as well, but I like it to sound pretty nice before we go along. So we just do basic panning. So this is our hi-hat. We want it in the middle because it's marking the tempo. But the maracas doing the offbeats, they can be panned, and that gives quite a cool effect. Yeah, so that would be enough. And then we can pan these two guys as well, the little wood blocks. Yeah, that's just basic panning. We can always go back and undo it or redo it, but I just like it to sound spatial from the beginning. So that'll be our full drums. Again, what I would do now is just duplicate that loop and then subtract from it. So if that's our full drums, sometimes you won't even use your full drums, at least for me, because I tend to make them quite full at the beginning, and then I'll just maybe like start subtracting. So I've duplicated the clip, and what I'll do is I'll play this one and see what I can take away. Maybe these guys. Yeah. So what I've just done is selected I've got into the MIDI clip and then selected the whole line of the maracas and just zeroed them out. So that's an easy way of doing that. That's pretty good for a second option. So let's rename that as drums 2. And again, use whatever naming system you find useful and easy. That's something I struggled with for a long time. I still do sometimes, but yeah, whatever works for you, just as long as you can tell the difference. Cool. So at this point, we'll do the same thing again, and let's say maybe we take away the hi-hats. Cool. Hey guys, sorry, I had to restart my sound card. We're back. So that'll be drums 2, and then drums 3. I always seem to really like this variation, like no hi-hats, claps only. That works really well for like if you want to empty out the drums but keep the groove. And then maybe a fourth one with only the hi-hats. So we go back to that and then take away my claps. That tends to be quite good for intros. So we'll do that as drums 4. And yeah, again, I did it in a very quick way by deleting each element. What you can also do if you want to create different grooves is just take away one note, or you know what I mean. You can always do that later on in the process. I'm just trying to do it a bit more quickly so we can get through as much as possible. Something really nice to do at this point as well would be to add groove to this. What that means is obviously we've sequenced our drums. We haven't played them, so they're quite mechanical at the moment. What you can do is basically if you come to the MIDI clip, right? and right over here where it says clip, you got groove, and when we press that button, hello, are we back? Sorry, my internet just went funny. Hopefully we're back. So at this point, adding a groove will make it groovier. So if we just select the MIDI clip here and then go to the groove section, we'll find different kinds of grooves. I tend to use swing a lot, and then the way this works is basically the resolution of your MIDI clip. So we worked with 16. We've got 8 beats here, and just 16 works really well for me. So that's 16, and then the percentage of groove you want to apply. So that's 16 5%, and that's 16 99%. So I would apply here, I would usually go for something midterm, so like 35, just drag it onto there, and then you'll immediately notice that it goes way groovier. If we exaggerate, you can see the difference even more. So I tend to use around 40-50%, so I'll just use 45 for now. And again, you can apply different grooves to different clips. So potentially you could change grooves within a track. What you can also do at this point is say you want to automate something within a MIDI clip. You'd come to this place here, which opens up the envelope section. At which point you can draw automations for anything within a MIDI clip. We're not going to go into that because that's a bit more complex. So yeah, we are going to do other sessions in the future. But a really cool way to use this within a drum rack is basically if you want to send one clap to a reverb at one given point, you can automate that given point in time, and it will always happen on that same clap, which can be quite interesting, just again to create movement within your drums. So at the moment we've got this, then emptier, even emptier, and hi-hats only. Cool. Percussion. Now, for percussion, I generally use one drum rack based percussion and then 1 or 2 or 3 loops channels. And this is when it gets really cool, because the percussion for within a drum rack basically is the same process as the drums, but obviously we're talking about percussion, so we're going to apply different rhythms. I've got this pre-drawn. Oh no, I haven't. So I'll just quickly compose one of these clips. Again, I want it to be a bit longer. With percussion, you might want it to be even longer, just to create more variables. And with percussion, I tend to usually play it on the pads just so it sounds more natural. But you could draw them in as well. So here we've got, let's see what we have. Yeah, just some hand drums. So if we play that clip, and then I'm gonna play it with my emptier version of the core drums, so that I've got space to create within. So let's open that guy. We can see what's going on within the MIDI clip. And if I have my on the push, you've got a button which is it allows you to record real time into a MIDI clip. So I'm just going to press that. Cool. So we can use that. Basically, what I'll do now is just have a look at the samples. So we've got this guy. Just going to cut them really short because I've brought them out of a loop. And then this guy. Again, just leave the one hit. This one's pretty strong. See the transient on that. Yep. This guy. Pretty good. So I take this guy away because I don't like it. Just that one. And then what I would do, as you can see, they are not exactly quantized. So the quantization, the way it works is I could just do Command A and select all my notes and then right click and quantize them. That would quantize to whatever the prearranged setting is. So I'm just going to go back and you can see how they move right into place. So I don't want that because that's going to take away all my groove. What I want is to draw my quantized settings. So we're using the 1/16 grid, and what this does is basically we can tell it to quantize only a certain percentage. So if we say maybe 60%, it's moved the notes, but it's kept them a little bit off grid. That's what gives you a little bit of swing as well. Yeah, there we go. And now we have our first kind of percussion loop. So the process here would be the same. So we'll call that full. And then duplicate that. We can take away certain guys. Again, you can do this one by one if you want. So I'm just doing it kind of randomly for now. And then we'll create a third one, which is even less stuff in it. Cool. So we can do, instead of full, we can do perk 1, perk 2, perk 3. Cool. Cool. They are quite dry because I did cut them very, very short. So what we could do for these guys is maybe just put a little reverb on them just to make them a little bit more natural. And I'm going to put it on the channel itself. But actually, I'm not. What we could do here is, since we're using a drum rack, and a drum rack is a mixer within itself, same way that return tracks work on this mixer. So the sends, I could send this whole track to my reverb. Or I could place a reverb within my drum rack. So if I open up my chains here and then my returns, that's where the equivalent of these two guys within the full mixer are going to be over here for the drum rack. So I could put a reverb on there, and now it's created a return channel within my drum rack, which I control here. Same as my sends for the full channels. For the sub channels, I've got my sends. So I could choose which guys to send to that reverb. So some of them are dry, some of them are wet, and again, in that way we create movement and differences and naturality. What I could also do here is pan them like we did with the rest. Cool, that's more or less it for percussion. Now moving on, I'm just going to save that. What I would do next, basically, is start adding a little bit of percussion loops. Now, percussion loops, people tend to use them a lot, just like throw a loop on there and make it work. I edit them quite a lot, especially if I'm using library stuff. These are a few shakers that I recorded here at home, so we could just use them as they are. So this has been recorded and then warped. As you can see, the full file is this whole thing here. It usually comes like this. Right, and then what I have to do is select the loop and the loop size and the loop start. So say we want that there because it's an offbeat. It's like a snare. So bah, bah, bah. And then if they are a little bit out of tempo, which they probably would be if they've come from a home recording, you can then warp them. So these guys are warp markers. So you see, I've taken them off now. It's come completely off grid. So if I select these and then quantize them, they'll come back. Or I could just do it manually as well and say, look, I want this guy to be here and I want this guy to be here. Yeah? So, instead of using these, we'll just create variations of this, which is something that you usually do if you're working with samples. So this is my full normal one. Then what I do now is just basically, if I don't want it to hit every time, I can create a volume automation within this clip. So if I open envelopes here again, and then I'll get my pencil tool out. See? So I've got every other one now. Another important bit here is to always, once you've selected your loop, always right click this arrow here without your pencil tool on, and you want basically 111 to be here. So set 111 here so that you start counting from where your loop starts. That way we know that we have to stop here. not there, because otherwise it's not going to be a perfect loop. So there we go. And then there's another cool trick, last trick with this, and then we'll go into bass, which would be basically, if we, let's do it with this one. So I'll duplicate this one. Right, you see it's quite a long sound. What I want to do is make it shorter. So basically, I'm going to go into warping setting here, and then this is chosen now as beats. This is kind of the envelope mode of this warping machine, and I'll just make it shorter. So I've now ended up with a shorter sample. So if I compare it, yeah, if I compare it to this one, I've got the full tail of the sound on that. This one has been made shorter. That's pretty cool for drops or just moments where you want to empty out the drums a little bit, but keep it going. So I'll call that short. Cool, I've got 3 variations of that. Let's go on to bass. So I'm not going to explain to you guys what these basses are, like the sound design of it, because that would take quite a long time. But basically, they're 2 operator synths that I created basically from scratch. They're quite simple. This is a distortion machine, and that's a bit of compression. So just write down, basically compose a bass melody, which could be, let's go, yeah, just something simple, just for example's sake. So let's do it with the kick. Cool. So very, very simple, like 3 notes. Cool. Obviously, that's way too high for being my bass. So I'm just going to select these notes and then hold shift and arrow down. That goes a whole octave down. Just going to draw another note in here. Again, I could quantize them, but I'm just nudging them into place because I want to do that for the bass. Maybe we'll go down another octave. And then I'll copy that guy to my sub, and we can play them together and see what they sound like. Hopefully they don't sound too bad. So what we could do now is basically create a difference between these guys. So I'll take away these higher notes from my sub, and I'll make these notes longer. I could have also a constant sub. So if I've made these guys repeat in 3 notes, I'll just duplicate them and gently nudge them into place. And then we should have a sub bass that repeats equally. Cool. So we've created one bass line with that. I'm not going to go too much further with this because obviously you could do loads of different things with this. We'll just keep it simple for now, but I would usually create like 3, 4, at least 3 different moments for my bass. Or even, since we have a separate sub, just have one moment with both, one moment sub only. So that could sound pretty cool. And then obviously you could do a breaks moment. And then you start getting actual moments. Cool. I think you can get the gist. So moving on, what I would do at this point is basically I could take what would be the chords for this melody. So we've played here C, G, C, basically not much. And I could take this bass instrument that we've built for our bass, select everything that's in it, Command G, that groups everything into a single rack, and then I just copy it into this channel and it will duplicate the whole instrument. At least it should. Okay, we'll just create a new MIDI channel. Then do it. There we go. Just copy that into there. And then, so we said CG. So what I could do basically is play a chord. Yeah, so that could be it. I'll just play it and record it into this. So we've got that going. It's 2 big chords. Hopefully they're in scale. So that's what we're going to use for our up and pad. So I'm going to take, this was my bass instrument. And basically I want to make it into a pad. So let's do the pad first. So what are the characteristics of a pad? It's got long sounds, maybe not so harsh attacks. So you get the sound coming in smoothly and then dying down smoothly. So we can do that by messing with the envelopes in our operator. So We go. Got more or less of a paddy sound. Obviously, there's a lot more that you can do with this in terms of panning, effects. Again, I can't go into everything today, but you get the idea. And then we can take the same chords, actually we'll take the whole channel, duplicate that, take this guy away, and this will be our arpeggio channel, which is a MIDI effect. We can find it here. So because it's a MIDI effect, it goes before your instrument, and that basically will sequence your notes in a different way. So solo that. But for up instruments, we need usually sharper attacks. Otherwise, we can't hear the notes because they're too short. And I'm not going to go through this in much detail, but basically that's our rate. So that'll make it quicker. And this is the number of steps, so the octaves which it affects. So we can go up, down. That's pretty cool. And then we can open up the filter. There we go. So let's just name stuff. This is our pad. This is our up. And the interesting thing with this way of creating stuff is that you literally, apart from the drums bit, you start off with one synth, which in this case was our bass. And from that, you create a pad and you create an up just by messing around with the sound design part of your synth. I tend to do that a lot because it brings unity of sound to your track. If you start using one VST here, one VST there, blah, blah, I do that as well, but it tends to make things not glue together very much. Whereas if you take it from one instrument and just modify that, they kind of came from the same thing. There's no right or wrong. It's just a way of doing it. And again, creating variables for these guys as well. I'm not doing that now. You guys can do that at home if you want, once you get the project. And then at the end, let's see, I'm not even sure if this is in the same tone, but... yeah, that works. Basically, this guy is just my bidding bow that I recorded in Brazil. And it's got, this is a resample of it, actually. It's got some effects added to it. Yeah, you can hear some reverse stuff. And then here I've just got a filter going on from one side to another. Okay, so final point before we go on to the Zoom call. In terms of volumes, I always try and... So when I get to this point, I realize, oh, we're hitting above 0 dB here. See? The clipping. That's not very good at all. So you should try and always keep this below 0. And never by turning that volume down, because that means you're still clipping, just not above 0. You're clipping above wherever your fader is. So now it's -7. I'm hitting -6. So I'm still clipping. I've just turned the whole clipping down. So what I need to do is turn everything down. So the way I do that is I select all channels. So select one channel and press Shift and click there, or click on whatever channel, Command A. And then you come over to the volume, and when you turn it down, they all come down together. Look at that. And now we're not clipping. I'm gonna leave my voice higher so you can hear me. So that's pretty good. Cool. Well, guys, I think that's it for the demo part. Let me open up a Zoom call here, and I'll share it here with you guys. So you guys can ask questions if you want to have a chat as well. Okay. So I'm going to stop. Well, actually, let me start the Zoom call first. There we go. Invite. So this is the, if I post it, yeah. I'm going to post it on the video. Hopefully everyone can see. Yeah. So that's, the password is the last thing. Let's just have one last listen. And then you can obviously create different moments by stopping things. So say you want a break bit. And I think the Zoom is coming through here. Yeah, you got people coming in. And thank you very much, guys, for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I'm going to switch to the Zoom call now. And hopefully I'll see some of you there. Thanks a lot, and see you next time.